And that's where Hancock shines. It feels unique. It feels like something outside the formula. People are craving that right now. They want something that breaks the pattern. And Will Smith's messy, flawed, but strangely relatable superhero delivers that. Meanwhile, Mission Impossible fell into the too big to fail trap. Everyone assumed it would dominate because of its size and scale. But big doesn't always mean better, especially when you're sitting at home with your remote in hand. The spectacle fades. What sticks is the character, the story, the thing that makes you feel something. It's kind of funny, isn't it? In the end, it's not always the polished, perfect thing that wins. Sometimes, it's the imperfect, unexpected underdog that sneaks in and steals the show. And maybe that's something we can all relate to in life, too. We don't have to be perfect to stand out. Sometimes being real, being flawed, being different, that's what connects with people the most. So now I want to throw the question over to you. When you're scrolling through streaming, what makes you stop and hit play? Is it the big stars, the flashy trailers, or is it something that feels unique, something that promises a different kind of ride? I'd love to know what draws you in because everyone has their own little decision-making process when it comes to picking a movie at home. And if you enjoyed hanging out with me while we broke this down, I think you'll love another video I've got where I dive into other movies that flopped at the box office but found new life later on. It's such a fascinating trend, and honestly, it shows how unpredictable audiences can be. If you liked this chat, hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown. It really helps the channel grow, and I'd love to keep sharing these fun stories with you. Because at the end of the day, movies are more than just budgets and box office numbers. They're about how they make us feel. And sometimes, the movie nobody expected to matter ends up being the one people love the most. And honestly, it makes sense when you think about it. Audiences today are kind of exhausted with superhero movies that all feel the same. It's like eating the same meal over and over again. At first, it's exciting. But after years of identical flavors, you start craving something new, something with a twist. And Hancock delivers that twist. It's not about a hero who has everything figured out. It's about a guy who's powerful but flawed, who's saving people but also making mistakes. He's not polished. He's not charming all the time. He's raw. And that actually feels more human. Who hasn't felt like a mess sometimes? That relatability makes it stand out in today's landscape. Now let's look at Tom Cruise's side of the story. His movie, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, was a huge deal. Before it even released, people were hyped about it. You probably saw those behind-the-scenes clips of Tom doing the insane motorcycle stunt off a cliff, right? The marketing was everywhere. The budget? Astronomical. Around $300 million went into it. That's the kind of money that says, this is going to blow everyone away. And in theaters, it had its moment. People went, they watched, they talked about the stunts. But then it landed on streaming. And suddenly, silence. It just didn't spark the same interest. People weren't rushing to rewatch it at home. It's almost like the magic didn't carry over once it left the big screen. And that right there might be the key. Movies like Mission Impossible are built for theaters. They're made to be seen on giant screens, with surround sound, where you can feel the tension of every jump and every explosion. But at home, on a smaller screen, maybe while you're multitasking or scrolling through your phone, that same impact doesn't land. Those jaw-dropping stunts don't feel as powerful when you're sitting on your couch. The story has to hold up just as strongly as the action, and maybe this time, it didn't connect as deeply as it needed to. So now we have this fascinating clash. Will Smith's underdog superhero movie, which people once brushed aside, is now standing tall in streaming numbers. And Tom Cruise's carefully crafted, insanely expensive action spectacle is struggling to keep the spotlight. It's like the little engine that could versus the giant machine that ran out of steam. And here's the interesting lesson in all this. Streaming is a completely different battlefield compared to theaters. In theaters, big budgets and big names can pull people in. The hype, the spectacle, the FOMO of seeing it on the big screen, all of that works. But when it comes to streaming, it's not about money. It's about connection. People scroll through endless options every night, and they're not thinking about how much the studio spent. They're thinking, what feels good to watch right now? What's different? What's interesting? You know how sometimes movies that were expected to be massive hits end up falling flat, while the ones nobody really talked about much at the time somehow make a comeback years later? It's kind of like that friend who was quiet in school but then shows up years later looking amazing and doing incredible things. Well, that's what just happened in the world of streaming, and honestly, it's one of those stories that makes you stop and go, wait, really? Because here's the twist. Will Smith's old superhero movie is suddenly on top again. Yep, Hancock, the one with the grumpy superhero who wasn't exactly polished or perfect, is right now beating Tom Cruise's latest mission, Impossible, which cost about $300 million to make. That's not a small number, that's blockbuster territory, stunt after stunt, giant budget, this has to succeed, kind of money. And yet, people at home are picking Will Smith's messy little superhero over Tom Cruise's mega stunts. It feels kind of shocking, right? Tom Cruise is the guy we all know as the king of action. He does his own stunts, hangs off planes, jumps off cliffs, and keeps raising the bar with every movie. Usually, when you hear Tom Cruise is in a film, you just assume it's going to dominate. But this time, the story flipped. The underdog movie is getting the spotlight, while the giant blockbuster isn't pulling in the same excitement on streaming. And the big question is, why? Why are people choosing to rewatch Hancock instead of diving into Tom Cruise's huge spectacle? Let's rewind for a second. Do you remember Hancock when it first came out? Back in the day, superhero movies were already getting big. Marvel was rising fast, DC was making its mark, and audiences were starting to expect that shiny, perfect hero look. You know the kind, the noble, charming, selfless savior who has a neat costume and a clear mission. And then along came Hancock. Will Smith wasn't playing your typical superhero. He was grumpy. He was careless. He drank too much. And he didn't exactly care about what people thought of him. Honestly, he was a bit of a mess. And that's what made the movie so different. Some people loved that twist because it felt refreshing. Others thought it was sloppy or confusing. The reviews were mixed. It wasn't a massive critical success, but it wasn't a total flop either. It kind of landed somewhere in the middle. But here's the thing about movies, sometimes they age in unexpected ways. What didn't click back then suddenly makes a lot of sense years later. And now, on streaming, Hancock is finding new life. Viewers today are rediscovering it, and they're drawn to it. They're pressing play not once, but sometimes twice. It's climbing the charts and grabbing attention in a way no one expected.